Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. Now, if you've ever thought about starting a business and you hear these stories about someone who's gone through some struggles, some challenges, or maybe even lost it all, my guest today has experienced some of her own challenges and then persevered in spite of that fact to continue to push forward to what she is doing today. Now, Beate Chelette, I want to thank you for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here, Zach. Let's do it. Let's dive right in.
Absolutely. Now, I love to ask at the beginning of these conversations, what got you started in the entrepreneurial space? Was this always a dream or goal of yours, or falling into it? Or how did that go for you?
I was laid off and I was unemployable, and it was during a very big, massive recession. And I really didn't have any other choice other than to go out on my own. Looking back, I do believe that I've always had an entrepreneurial bone in my body because I was selling posters out of my
Mhm.
bedroom when I was 12, and I was doing little, crocheted owls on little safety pins and sold them for like a little bit of money. So something must have always been there.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of a story. I was talking with someone else that was selling blow pops out of their locker in school when they were in high school. And so, yeah, I mean, when you look back and you can really think about it, there's something there. And then that forced choice or forced opportunity presented itself. So you then had to get something started on your own as someone who at the time was unemployable. So what was it that you got started with?
I started a photography representation business. So I was representing a number of different photographers, primarily in the um, fitness and swimsuit and lifestyle, California lifestyle department. I also had architectural photographers that were doing, buildings and interior design images.
Mhm.
And that's how I got started. And then the business expanded to add a still photography production division. So I was producing still photography shoots where people would come from all over the world and produce in Los Angeles when it was too cold in other countries. And I was able to produce in this capacity for companies like Mercedes Benz, BMW, Wrangler, Levi Strauss.
Wow. Okay. So you must have had a level of expertise in this field to be able to then bring in clients at this level. I mean, some people who are in photography, they might start with, taking family pictures or at a wedding or some other type of event. So was your former experience in the area of photography and production?
I was a photo editor at Elle Magazine, and I'm a trained photographer myself.
Okay.
So for me, having that kind of level of quality was,
Mhm.
goes without saying because that's what I was used to. I mean, when I was at Elle Magazine, I was working with the best photographers in the world, Helmut
Yeah.
Newton, including, you know, people like George Harrell, great grandmasters of photography, Douglas Kirkland. So this was not unusual for
Mhm.
me to be at that level of quality. So yeah, I mean, that's my standard.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you jumped into that and you were able to then start to see your business grow and bring in clients from around the world. And now that sounds amazing and life changing, really, when you're talking about business and entrepreneurship. That's not always the case long term, though. So, anything occur along the way that changed that for you, or is that what you're still doing today?
No, so what happens a lot of times, I mean, they say that the average person changes their careers 7 times in their
Hmm.
lifetime. In
Sure.
my case, I think that's a underestimation, really. So I was pretty happy. So I thought in this capacity of doing the production, which was primarily over the cold months in Europe. So production season usually would start in September and go until about March until it was warm enough to photograph back in Europe. And then the photography work kept me busy for the rest of the year. So I felt I was in pretty good shape. And then um but stuff happens, So then I had a photographer who left and said, if I you can sue me for the $30,000 I owe you, because he knew that me suing him would cost more than the $30,000
Mhm.
that he owed me. And I fell back and lost a lot of income. And
Mhm.
then, and then a production client would fall off. So, it was volatile, but eventually I got up to about $1 million. I'm in the 4% of entrepreneurs in the United States that even make it to $1 million in revenue.
Mm.
And I had this feeling that something wasn't right in my business. I had an assistant, my only employee, and I felt something was
Mhm.
amiss. And I fired her only to find out that I fired her too late. And she
Mhm.
had come up with a plan to run her business, which was my business without me,
Mm.
with one of my key vendors. And next thing I know, invoices that I wrote were paid to them. And then when I called the client and I said, "Hey, what's going on with this invoice? It's overdue." They said, "Oh no, we paid this a long time ago." I said, "Who'd you pay it to?" They said, "We paid it to them." And they had
Mm.
said that I, had didn't pay them. I mean, I didn't even know that they had set up this business. And so I sued them both because I felt that I was wronged and I wanted to be right. And they
Yeah.
had done something that I felt I needed to be punished for. So next thing you know, I'm in this massive lawsuit,
Mm.
spending tens of thousands of dollars of money I really don't have because I just, got betrayed.
Mhm.
And but the season's coming around, so I just have to hold out a couple of months until production season comes around. I have a $500,000 in jobs on the books. I'm thinking, "Hey, at least I'm getting some cash flow at that time."
Yep.
Turns out, I wake up one day and September 11th came,
Mm.
and in one day it was over. I mean, I
Yeah.
lost a $500,000 in one day. I mean, every single job was canceled.
Wow.
And, then the lawsuit eventually settled a
Mhm.
couple months later, and when I paid everything and all my debt was paid off and I got some flowers for the attorney to thank him, I had literally 0, so I had to start all over again.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, no, that is not an expected circumstance to go through. I mean, let alone the circumstance with the assistant, but then also to have 9/11 occur and to experience the change in your ability to continue in that business. But getting everything paid off, though, balancing back out at 0 and then realizing, okay, I got to start over. So was it then that you took that opportunity to make a change, or was that then the same kind of business that you continued to push forward with?
Well, interestingly enough, the business that I then decided to push forward with was the business that this photographer who betrayed me had had actually given me the idea for, which was a stock photography syndication for architectural and interior photography. Nobody said that the universe, God, or spirit does not have a particular sense of humor. And we had sold his images, so we got lots of phone calls from people that said, "Hey, that image that this photographer had photographed, would he have a house with a red door
Mhm.
that they were looking for a paint catalog?" And then we'll go through the archive and we'll figure this out. And so I had this idea that I was going to build a stock photography syndication, a global syndication for images for architecture and interior. And because of my expertise with Elle Magazine and my background with top level talent, I decided I was going to go after the top level talent. And I was going to go after the number one guys in the industry. And I did, because when you have the number one guy in the industry, number two and number three automatically follows because they go where the top guys go.
Mhm.
So if you're listening to this, do not do what other people tell you. Don't warm up your business with a C level, go straight to A. And so I started building up the stock photography syndication, but I had no money. So I had to bootstrap building this from the ground up again. And I'm going back into debt again. I'm going back into
Mm.
debt, by the tune of $135,000 now. And it
Yeah.
is at a point now where it's game over, where I really don't have any more money. And I have to borrow money to pay interest on borrowed money, which, as we all know, is the death spiral in finance. And,
Right.
I'm thinking this is gonna be it, Zach.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that is a circumstance again that you don't want to have to be in. I've also experienced that when you have to start borrowing money to pay down money that you're borrowing, definitely the spiral is, and you're reading the writing on the wall. So, was that it, or what happened next? I mean, how did you come overcome that circumstance?
Y right, because I'm here, right? And I'm in a
Yeah,
nice office,
you
so
are.
what the heck happened?
Mhm.
So I flew to Germany to drum up some business. There was an annual conference, and when I went to Germany, my father, who at the time lived in Germany, was having a stroke, but my dad did not have a stroke. My father had pancreatic cancer.
Mhm.
So my father passes away within only 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm standing at the funeral at the grave in this beautiful Nether Bavarian town. And, and I just got back from there. It's just so beautiful because it's a Baroque church. It's on this hill and it overlooks the whole valley.
Mhm.
And we just had buried my father, and my phone rings. It's my office in Los Angeles, and they tell me that my office was just served a notice while I was at a funeral in Europe.
Mm.
And the notice was that I was going to be evicted from the place because I was running a home office in a rented property, which was a handshake agreement that I had done with the previous owner, which was not in the lease. And that
Mm.
was before home offices were a thing. And so the new owner wanted to get rid of me. And this was a moment, Zach, where I fell on my knees and I raised my fist and I yelled at God and I said, if you have a plan, this would be a really excellent time to
Yeah.
fill me in because it just wasn't making any sense. I mean, it just kept coming and coming and coming. I mean, was this ever going to end? And now my
Right.
worst case scenario has happened. And then I had to surrender to the
Mhm.
outcome because I literally had no more control over anything. And I returned to Los Angeles, and not too long after, I got a letter from the White House. And
Okay.
the letter was from the White House, the President of the United States. In my absolute desperation, and because my former mother in law was such a nag, I wrote a letter to the President of the United States asking for help. So she would go write a letter to the President of the United States. Have you written your letter yet? Why don't you go to the number one person in the country? If anybody can help you, it's him. Have you written that letter yet? And finally, at some point, Zach, I'm like so fed up with having this
Mhm.
conversation. I'm just
Right.
saying, fine, I'm going to write the damn letter. So we just do not ever have to talk about it. Now imagine my
Yes.
surprise when I get a letter from the White House. So the President of the United States, of course, never saw this letter, but
Mm.
it put me in touch with the second in command of the Small Business Administration in Los Angeles County. And this guy wanted to know what nutcase would write a letter to the President of the United States instead of calling him directly, which never occurred to me.
Uh, the resources that we don't know about are ones that we are gonna reach out to necessarily. So,
I mean,
uh,
how is that? And so he says, like, yeah, no, I had to meet you in person. But what it did, it put me in touch with the right person to help me find a bank to then restructure my many
mhm.
different debts into one fixed loan of $135,000, 10 years, and the Small Business Administration guaranteed, I think, like 80%
Mhm.
of it. And that freed up my line of credit. That got me to break even 3 months later. So between bankruptcy and break even, it was 3 months. And
Yeah.
then I became the world leader in my category 18 months later. And that's when a Bill Gates company came knocking on my door and asked me
Mhm.
to tell them how I did it. And I told them that I wasn't, because if they wanted it, they needed to buy it. And then they asked me how
Mhm.
much I wanted. And then I said, I want a couple million. And then they said, okay. And that's how I ended up selling my business to Bill Gates for millions of dollars after the worst moment of my life, 18
Yeah.
months later.
Yeah. No, that was definitely a moment of reckoning when you said that you fell on your knees and just had to surrender to the circumstance because it was out of your control. But then you show up and you get this letter and that connects you with a person that brings you a solution and allows you to then keep pushing forward within 3 months, clearing that and being able to get to that place where you can be the leader and top of what you're doing and have the opportunity to sell your company to Bill Gates. I mean, that is an impressive story and circumstance. I want to step back just a moment just for our clarification. Stock images, it makes me think of these organizations or a lot of websites now that you can find where you can buy stock images. Is that the kind of company that you had put together and that was bought? Is that?
Yeah, so my specialty was
Mhm.
obviously in the interior and architectural
Yeah.
photography, but what had happened is that because these were the top people in the industry, they also worked with the top people in the industry. So they
Mhm.
worked with the top architects and the top interior designers who work with celebrities and the most
Yes.
famous and wealthy people in the world. So next thing I know, I got home stories from Francis Ford Coppola, Seal, Madonna, Terry Hatcher, Simon
Mm.
Baker, Julian Moore, and a lot of these A-list homes ended up on my desk, and
Yep.
the photographers had photographed them for the best magazines in the world, and they came out of embargo, and they said, "Can you sell them?" And I said, "Well, I was a photo editor at Elle magazine. I used to buy them. Of course, I can sell them."
Mhm.
And so
Yep.
that's what made us a world leader. That was the category we were leaders in,
Absolutely.
and everybody
Okay.
wanted that. They sold like hotcakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So sold your company. Now that's another pivot point in life when you have sold a company and you can't probably go back and do the same thing because now they probably have some kind of exclusivity where they now own that idea and that concept. And so what was next? What was next in the journey for you? Did you sit back and rest on your laurels for a period of time, or did you jump back into some other idea? What
Well,
happened next?
I certainly went to Neiman Marcus and I grabbed a $1,500 Burberry coat and a $200 T-shirt, and I realized
Absolutely.
that I had not bought that before because it was absolutely meaningless to me, and
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't gonna start now. I mean, that stuff just does not resonate with me. I mean, it's
Mhm.
nice to have clothes, but would I spend $1,500 for a coat? I don't think so. Um,
Right.
I'd rather go on a trip. So I realized that that was not for me, and I
Mhm.
had gotten an offer from that company to become the senior director of photography for global entertainment, which I took, and I was there for like another 2 years, which was an experience in itself. I was really kind of shocked on how people in corporations treat people that work there
Mm.
and the culture and kind of what went on. So I quit, and then I set up I wrote a book, Happy Woman, Happy World, where I talk a lot about how women in leadership can be successful. I have developed a couple concepts like ego rhythm and understanding what the superhuman paradox is that most women are suffering from. Wrote the book, published it. It's an award-winning book
Mhm.
um, that is exclusively available on Amazon. It won, I think, 2 or 3 awards, and just, really trying to figure out what was my next thing. And today I work as I worked then as a consultant, as a business
Yep.
strategist. I help people land planes. How I put it, I work with a lot of visionaries and leaders and help them architect growth. People come to me for three different reasons. They either have an idea, that a passion that they needs to be turned into a profit, turn a talent into a business, or they have a business and they need a signature growth system where everything fits under one umbrella and has a unique differentiation factor, or they have a necessity for a strategy for growth and they come to me to help them to grow and to really figure out what the scaling strategy is so they can double and triple those numbers. And that's what I do. And I love it. I love working with people. I do a lot of nonprofit work, do a lot of mentoring, and I measure my impact by the impact I help other people make.
Yeah, no, that's a great opportunity to help serve others and also continue to be able to have carry out a passion and growing a business. So it's not necessarily your businesses now. Well, in a sense, it is because you're doing this work, but at the same time, you're helping others to grow their business. You clearly have demonstrated that you have that capacity and skill set to do that in the different ventures that you started and then successfully exited from with that sale to Bill Gates, and now being able to help others to carry out a vision and grow their company and organization and land that plane. I mean, that is an awesome way to continue to carry on a legacy into the future with
Thank you,
hundreds.
Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great impact that you can have when you can carry it on, help their vision get passed down. So you mentioned a book. If I'm not mistaken, if I recall correctly, you've written other books too. Is that correct?
This is the book, Happy Woman, Happy
Okay.
World.
All right.
I do a lot of other things. I have the 5 Star Success Blueprint,
Okay.
which is a really guide on the blueprint that we have. We have a quiz that we have published that's called What's Your Talent Worth? Because I'm
Yep.
realizing that there's a lot of people right now that are thinking about going out on their own and trying to figure out what their talent is worth in this
Mhm.
market. So I sat down and I came up with a profit formula and I calculated it. And so anybody can go, it's free. You go to whatsyourtalentworth.com and it'll, you fill it out, takes 2 minutes, and then it'll calculate it. It'll send it back to you within about 5 minutes because it has to go somewhere. It's a mathematical
Mhm.
calculation. And then you'll know what your earning potential is in this market. Because I, again, want to help people to realize um, in this market, in where we are right now, can you make money with
Mhm.
what your skill set is? And if that is the earning potential that you have, but you're not making the kind of money, well, then you need to sit down and you really need to think about what that means to you. And then
Yeah.
if you say, well, if I have this earning potential, but I'm only making a third of it, is this my time? And then if it is your time, maybe you should give me a call and I'll help you to figure out how to get there.
Absolutely. No, what's your talent worth.com, correct?
What's your talentworth.com? Yes.
What a great resource. So now if somebody does go to that, they find that, there's some disparity here. I think there may be an opportunity for me to grow and build. And they call you, have a conversation. Is that kind of a free consultation initially just to see if it's a good fit that you might be able to assist somebody, or how does that work?
Yeah. So we have a process called an uncovery
Mhm.
session, and we call it an uncovery session for a reason. My job is to help you to figure out what your next step should be. What is it that can be done? And then you need to decide on whether or not that's a step you actually want to take. That's your
Mhm.
job. I can only get you to the point and say, look, this is how long it's going to take. This is what is involved. This is what's going to cost. But the decision is yours. And that's what I do in these uncovery
Mhm.
sessions. We help people to really figure out, is this for me? It's complimentary. It takes 15 minutes, um and then we'll help you figure out if this is for you. And if you want to go further, we can go further. And if not, then at least you know.
Absolutely. So it gives somebody something that they can come away from that
Exactly.
conversation. They can then take it and move it forward if they choose to, but also at the same time, they can move forward working with you in your organization to be able to help improve and better their circumstances as they grow and go forward. Now, are you at a point that you have others that are assisting you, or is it just you that is doing the work?
No, we have a team.
Yep.
Working with clients, I really do by myself
Mhm.
for the most part, just because I love it when the lights go on and when we land a plane and when I see people
Yes.
make an impact. Um, Possibly at some time in the future, but for the time being, you know, you watching this, you'll probably end up working with me.
Absolutely. Wonderful. I love that. So I have one question that I want to make sure I ask you that I love to ask all of my guests. If you were to be handed $1 million today with no restrictions to that, how would you invest that in your business or another endeavor, and why?
I probably with $1 million right now, because I'm impact driven, I probably would figure out how to get this turn your talent into a business into the hands of more people,
Hmm.
and really launch more directed campaigns in specific markets where I feel that there's a need for more entrepreneurship and on a collaborative environment, and put a couple of people on there. That's probably what I would do, is to use it to scale this particular product, because I do think that people are looking to start their own thing and they don't know where to go, and they need to know that they need to have the business model before they buy any of the other internet marketing stuff. Without the business model and knowing what it is that you're doing, you'll be buying for the rest of your life,
Yeah,
as you probably
absolutely.
very well know, right? That's the internet marketing thing. It's never enough.
Absolutely. That is 100% true. And I love that answer because you're looking for people that have that capacity within them, that talent within them, that they just need a little bit of direction and support to be able to flourish and to be able to take it forward. There are so many talented people that are out there in the world today that could start their own business, but just need that little bit of a support, a little bit of a nudge to get them to that next step. So I love that answer. Now, if our guests want to find out more about you, the work you're doing, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, number one, take the quiz. I think
Mhm.
that's going to be very self-serving for you. What's your talentworth.com. If you heard
Yep.
anything that resonates to her or her team, go to uncovering.session.com, fill that out, and let's schedule that right away. Let's not wait. There's a what is it I heard? Somebody says, let's not wait for day one. Make today day one. I'm a big believer of time is of essence. And
Yes.
you find me on all social media at Beate Chelette or the Growth Architect. Drop in a DM, leave a comment, and make sure you say hello. I'm always happy to hear what is going on, and if I can help, I'll be more than happy to help.
Well, thank you, Beata, and thank you for joining me for this episode today. You are definitely a demonstration of someone that has not only grown your own business, but is now helping others in their architecture of their business growth. So
Thank you so much for
thank you
having me,
again.
Zach.